When I was a little girl, caring for things was simple. We always had pets, and I loved to walk them and feed them and play with them. My father loved to garden, so he taught me how to water and weed and tend to the plants, and I loved watching them grow. And then there was my brother, only 2 years older than me. He had completely lost his eyesight by the age of 9, so I learned at an early age to push my chair in when I got up from the table, to close the cupboard doors, and to never leave my shoes in the middle of the floor. Well, almost never. I didn't think about what it meant to care. I just did it. Watching how my brother navigated the world and how the world responded to him quietly shaped the person that I am today. And it carried me into my 25-year career as a first responder. But growing up has a way of complicating things. And care changes as the stakes get higher. Sometimes it looks like the deep sorrow in telling a parent their child has died in an accident. And sometimes it looks like the great joy of finding someone safe who's been lost in the woods for days. Sometimes it feels like incredible frustration when intervening in a family conflict that can't be resolved. These moments demand care, but different kinds of care. There's care that is quiet and tender. There's care that is joyful. And then there's care that sometimes must be firm. And although those examples come from my world, we all carry a version of it. And here's what I didn't understand for a very long time, that when we don't know how to care for ourselves, we will struggle to care for others. And years later, I would see that same pattern in myself. When I was 14 years old, I was walking home from a friend's house, and I was attacked by a high school boy who grabbed me and shoved his hands down my shirt. I fought, and I kicked, and I ran home crying. I told my father what had happened, and he fell silent. Not because he didn't love me, but because he couldn't steady his own fear and shock. And without that steadiness, he couldn't reach out to me the way he wanted to. That moment taught me something that I didn't yet understand. That when we don't know how to care for ourselves, we can't fully care for others. When I was 20 years old, I lost my mother to cancer. I didn't grieve, and I didn't cry, not because I didn't care, but because I didn't know how to. 5 months after that, I was sexually assaulted by 2 of the men I worked with at my summer job, and I didn't tell a soul for years, but I didn't forget. That instinct that started with my brother, caring for those who are at a disadvantage, deepened when I found myself at a disadvantage too. So I followed that instinct, and I joined the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. I wanted to be everything for everybody, and I wanted to fix every system that was broken. Because when those social systems don't work, we first responders do. And many of you do too, in your families, your communities, your workplaces, stepping in when something breaks, when someone struggles, or when the system doesn't hold. And the same was true for me too. And I just kept going. The systems that I worked in, and many of the systems we all live in, are built to move care forward, then collapse quietly at first, then all of a sudden, when care needs to come back. I watched it happen. I lost colleagues to suicide, addiction, and burnout. And still, I thought I was just carrying trauma. Then my system collapsed too. Not because I was weak, but because no system can survive being pushed past its limits. On my first day at yet another new posting, I walked into our training academy where I'd be teaching new policing recruits. And behind my desk, I noticed this long metal cabinet stuffed with manuals, 15 to be exact. And my colleague noticed me looking at them and he said, "You're going to have to master those in order to teach." Those words on their own didn't seem like much, but ordinary moments aren't always ordinary. All of a sudden, my heart started pounding and my mouth went dry, and there was this voice in my head saying, "You're done. You can't do this. You have nothing left to give." 30 minutes into my first day, I walked out. I had managed fear my entire career, but in that moment, none of my tools worked. So I drove away sobbing until I finally pulled into a McDonald's parking lot, completely broken, with 23 years service and no idea why. I had cared deeply for everything and everyone, but I had left myself out of the equation. I just didn't know I was supposed to be included. We were trained to respond outward, not inward. And when you leave yourself out, the cost shows up somewhere. I didn't yet understand, and it would take time and more loss before I did. After that breakdown, I was off work for 3 months. And 4 months after returning, I learned that I needed open heart surgery. Within the same year, my policing career ended. And not long after, I was diagnosed with PTSD. I didn't see it myself. My husband did. And a therapy session meant to support him became the moment that I realized that I was struggling too. So I started treatment. And for the first time in my life, it became clear that care in my world had only moved outward. Real caring requires a system that allows care to return, not just on paper, not just in policy, but in practice, where receiving care is normalized. Care isn't linear, it's a loop. Care moves out, so it can come back, so it can move out again. And when those loops are built into the systems we're part of, our families, our communities, our workplaces, care becomes something that we can sustain. And when it's meant to do what it's supposed to do, we become stronger, and our systems become stronger too. So let's build those spaces where care can come back. In our homes, where honesty is safe. In our workplaces, where asking for support isn't penalized. And in yourself, where receiving care becomes a part of the way you live.